Welcome to the Dogger Pass Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Tom, at Dan Tom MMA. My co-host, as usual, at Madlab MMA. That is Madlab Mike in the house. And of course, we have not just Jared, but Dayton as our double threat producers, taking care of things in the back of the house. We appreciate them, and whatever they're doing, we're not asking too much. We don't want to know too much. You know, it's like the mafia. You know, we just trust them to do their job. We're gonna try to do ours, and hopefully, at the end, we can maybe make some money this weekend in Azerbaijan, Baku. How about you over there, Mike? How are you feeling about this week?
I'm good, man. I'm just hoping this card is better. By the way, welcome to my home. Whereas in my home, I stood home from the office today, so I'm not in studio. So bear with the walls.
Gotcha. All right.
Wait, do you hear that?
Oh, do they like?
Yeah. Hopefully, it's just in our ears. But
yeah, but it's hard.
If the audience hears that, forgive us.
It's hard to talk like that, though. No, like it's hard to concentrate when you're talking.
I think Jared and Dayton got it taken care of.
Ghost Rider, you there?
Again, we don't want to know too much, folks. This is what I'm talking about. You see, I told you guys last week about Jared unloading the body-shaped trash bags in and out of the trunk. He accidentally left his camera on. I don't want to know too much, Mike. I think we're live, so let's keep the show going.
And, all right, yeah, man. I mean, listen, let's hope it's more exciting than last week. Last week was definitely, it was almost like they took Xanax, bro. It was air Xanax in the building. It was crazy, bro. Like fights that were like minus 400 to end inside the distance looked like they could have went 5 rounds. But we made all the right reads. I mean, we made all the right reads. A lot of people, kind of shitting on the Usman, like guys like us that were back in Usman saying, he's 40 years old, this, that. But this is the mistake that everybody makes week in and week out. And I tell you all the time, you cannot just fade these guys for a shiny new toy. You just can't. You can't fade these guys for a shiny new toy. They need to prove something to you before you just pick them because you feel like this is a passing of the baton, or you think this is going to be, this is the time where Usman's just coming in for a check, or you can't do that. You guys got to be a little smarter than that because 70% of the time when you go for the shiny new toy that everybody's looking at, you're losing. So, you got to really do your due diligence and kind of understand that it's not always a business. It's not always a chess move. It's not always a marketing move. These guys are coming in to fight and they're going to win. And you got to go with who you really, truly believe and know is the better fighter.
Absolutely. And, in the matchmaker's defense, which I seldom do, right? In their defense, the matchups, say what you want about the odds or the meaning for the division, they were set to be action fights, So in their defense, it was a weird night in that sense. The matchmakers, they do try harder for the shows that are in front of the live crowd, right? But also something that I spoke about, people get mad when I bring this up, but we've seen examples 2 weeks in a row where it's like, for the crowd that's like, shut up about the schedule. We want fight. I don't care. I just want fights. It's like, okay, that's fine. I get it. I love fights every weekend to bet on too as a degenerate. Like, believe me, I get where you're coming from, but understand if you want fights, there's a cost to it. And the cost is short notice, random matchups that are very volatile, like we saw with giant price tags attached. Is that what you really want to be betting on, Mike? It's not what I really want to be betting on. And even when they do win, or even if you're like, oh, C should have won, the fact is, regardless if you think C should have won or not, did he really cover and look like a minus 500, a minus 700? Did any of these guys, win or lose, really cover their price tag? Even if they won, chances are they probably didn't cover. And a win's a win, I get that. But to your point, Mike, right? It's like, never be afraid to fade the market. And if you yourself are a part of the market, you're a part of the horde, like, don't be afraid to look around and pump the brakes and be like, wait, why are we really laying minus 700 or something like this, on this fighter? And I'm guilty too, right? And that's the thing about these cards is they're going to force us to make some bad decisions. Again, like my analogy, if you're in a room full of 5s, the 4s are going to start looking like 9s. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to start misgauging stuff. And don't get me wrong, maybe if I lay that heavy chalk on a more dependable product, like maybe this is dangerous to even say, but like a Kayla Harrison the other week, and yeah, I can get away with it there, maybe, but I don't even like that. I didn't like that at all, right? So you really got to be careful with this stuff. And again, with the Usman came through, that was that was probably the dog we were both most bullish on. And again, man, we got a great price tag on him. I even double dipped live for some reverse CLV. But I did mention on the show last week, right, Mike, that even before Usman went on his rant saying like, yo, I was actually more unhealthy earlier on in his career. He said that, I think, like,
great call by you, bro. Great call. I wanted to bring that up. That was a great call because you brought that up days before that interview, bro.
Yes.
Days before that interview. And I got to be honest with you. Listen, I'm transparent and I'm totally on. I did not even know that. Like, I did not know that he was that unhealthy coming into his career. So you brought that to my attention, and then when I heard that, I was like, this kid was spot on, like, before he even said it. So that's a kudos to you, dude.
Well, hopefully we y'all made out. I personally still kind of came up just a little bit short. The unders really hurt me, right? Back to what Mike was saying, like all these, like, did they take Xanax before they come out, and again, I don't want to go too hard, especially, obviously I have bias with the mix of guys like Shabazi and Malik who showed some improvements, right? It also depends on the dance partner, but yeah, I definitely got burned with those ones going long, right? So I feel y'all there, but at the same time, don't be DMing the fighters and getting mad at them for your stupid bets, right? I make stupid bets all the time. Never blame the fighters. And if you want to have a better chance of cashing your bet, be objective as we can, win or lose or draw. So that's what we're going to try to do here as we push on to UFC Baku, UFC on ABC8, UFC Fight Night. Hill versus Rountree Jr. I know the UFC has a bunch of different names for their fight nights, especially when we get into the weeds here. But speaking of getting into the weeds, we're in Baku, Azerbaijan. I don't know much about that place. I'm just going to shout my guy Ben Folks from the CME podcast, as he quoted Clay Davis from The Wire, where the UFC's acting like Clay Davis right now, where it's just like I'll take anybody's money if the motherfucker's just giving it away. So the quote Clay Davis Jr. We're in Baku, Azerbaijan. This is headlined by a fight, Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree Jr. They've tried to put together, the promotion has, multiple times, 2 times, maybe even this is the third, I believe. It's going to happen now. It's a southpaw versus southpaw fight. But before I give you those stats, we're going to kick it off with the numbers and totals like usual. We have Khalil Rountree, who opened as a slight favorite, maintaining that line pretty much exact as the opener, minus 125 for Khalil. Come back on your underdog, Jamahal Hill. As Sean Connery and Finding Forrester would say, plus 105. The total rounds are set to 4.5 rounds, with the over 4.5 rounds plus 220. And under 4.5 rounds, minus 300, which means, yes, they are firmly predicting some violence. Jamahal Hill, 1-0-1 in southpaw versus southpaw matchups. That no contest, of course, came to Klitz and Abreu in the fight. He actually, that's probably the best fight he looked against a fellow southpaw. Maybe we'll touch more on that here in a second. Whereas Khalil Rountree, his southpaw versus southpaw record, facing another fellow southpaw, that is 2-0-1. Now, his no contest is a loss to an EPO. I believe it was EPO. Tested positive Mikhail Alekseeva back all the way back in Mikhail's UFC debut. And Rountree looked really bad in that fight and has steadily looked better overall, as well as the southpaw versus southpaw matchup. So I wanted to get those stats before I throw it to my guy Mike, because the one last thing, Mike, I will say, and you can weigh on this from boxing. I don't know if you see this more or less. But especially in MMA, and I could say this as a southpaw, nobody hates fighting southpaws more than other southpaws, because we predicate our games primarily against orthodox opposition, both in the gym and in competition. So when you get 2 lefties, they hate it. They look awkward. And one thing I noticed, and it'll come up all the time when you're looking for it, it'll come up multiple times in our analysis for this card and this matchup, is the left hand becomes a weird lane. It feels weird to throw, and it feels weird to defend. Shout out to my guy Connor Rebush. The left hand is the southpaw killer. Most people focus on throw your power in the open stance, especially in MMA, because they don't know what a jab is, and they don't understand that you can actually still jab in an open stance. It's actually really effective. So everyone's focusing on that power hand, but it's the left hand that can be the killer. And we've seen some examples of that way back in boxing. What was it, back James Toney when he was skinny James Toney? I forget who he fought. He did that switch up to match the guy's southpaw stance, goes over and just kills the guy, right? So it can always flip the chessboard over when you're having battle 2 southpaws. But, oh, this guy has this advantage, easy. Oh, this guy has this advantage. You could flip that over sometimes. What's your take on the southpaw versus southpaw matchup in this matchup, Mike?
Yeah, I'm a southpaw, so I totally understand, because you got to remember, when you're training for a fight, you have to, or your training in general, just generalizing your training, your tendency is to train for orthodox fighters because majority of the time that's what you're facing. You're getting, a southpaw maybe 1 out of 5 times. So you kind of generalize your training that way. And if you fight a southpaw, then you kind of adjust your style. But it's very goofy foot. It's very awkward. I'm a big striking guy, as you guys probably know by now, all the talk I do about boxing and stuff like that. So I did a really, really deep, hard dive on this fight over on my site, the madlabmma.com, if you guys want to come check out all my breakdowns. But the boxing end of things, I really dive deep into. And this one I went back and forth through the entire breakdown. And the reason being is because you have 2 completely different striking styles. You got Jamahal Hill on one side, who's more of a pure boxer. Like he has a little bit more slick movement. He utilizes his range a little better. He's smoother, when he's throwing. It's more eye appealing. When you watch him, everything kind of flows in numbers. Sometimes it's a little weird. You kind of question, why is he throwing out? Why isn't he digging to the body? Or why is he going to the body and not going upstairs? Now, like everything's got to play in concert with each other. And sometimes he does it well, and sometimes he doesn't do it well. But he's got more of a boxing style. When you look at Khalil Rountree, this is a guy who's got more of a herky-jerky style to him. This isn't his normal comfort zone. When he first came into the UFC, he was kind of a completely different animal. He was very heavy at one time. He lost all this weight. He became a specimen. He's like a unit now. But he utilized his bullish ability to get inside on you, and he either clipped you with something, or at the time, his wrestling ability was so bad that you could just take him down and control him. Then he goes over to Thailand and he starts really honing his craft in a different manner. And even though he's becoming much better at it, he still doesn't look comfortable. And maybe he's comfortable, but his genetic prowess doesn't allow him to look like he's flowing. So it looks like he's kind of herky-jerky, and he looks a little unorthodox, and it looks awkward. But those are the fighters that give you problems. Because when you're so used to fighting a prototypical style fighter, whether it's Muay Thai or whether it's boxing, whether it's wrestling, they kind of have that prototypical style where maybe you can't screen them, maybe you can't, kind of decipher what they're going to do a step ahead, but you kind of can figure out their pattern. One thing about Rountree is you can't, because he does everything so kind of weird and unchained, and he's very choppy, and his movements are very bizarre, and he's got a ton of power. So if you sleep for 1 second, or you go into a situation where you're not sure what he's doing, you're questioning his movement, why is he going this way and he's going that way? Those are the punches that knock you out, the punches that you don't see. I don't care what anyone says. You can get hit 5 times straight in the face and you see them coming with equivalent power, and chances are you're not going to walk through them. You're going to get hurt. But the one that's going to knock you out is the one where you're looking this way or you don't see it coming. It doesn't have to be that hard. It's just your brain's not understanding what happened, and you go out. So when I look at this fight, I just question Jamahal Hill. I question where his confidence is. I question if he's going to be able to pull the trigger like he once did. I question if he really believes he is that guy that he thought he was a couple fights ago, because I was never a big Jamahal Hill guy. I never thought he was that good. I always thought he was slightly overrated. I used to get shit for it all the time. Jamahal Hill. And I used to say, this guy's not that good. He's good. He's good, but he's not that good. He's a tough guy. He's been in there some good opposition, but he has shown to be a little bit chinny. He has shown to be a little shy on the trigger, and now he's 2 losses in, and you got a question now. Okay, well, how is he going to bounce back from this? Now, is he going to fight to win? Is he going to go in there fight to win, or because now he's 2 fights in, is he going to fight not to lose? You can't do that with a guy like Rountree, because if you fight hesitant with a guy like Rountree, his power is going to end up reaching. And now he lost to Pereira in his last fight, but I gained more respect for him, and I got more positive feelings about him in that fight in a loss, because he showed he could take damage. He showed he's a dog. He showed he's going to stay in there and he also had his moments, so you can gain positive feedback from a guy, even in a loss, which I did with Rountree, where Jamahal Hill, the last couple of times he's been there, and I've been questioning his motives. I've been questioning, why isn't he pulling the trigger? Why doesn't he look fluid enough? Why doesn't he look like he's loose? Why does he look tense? So this is just more pressure on him again now to kind of prove to people, I really am that guy. I really did deserve that belt. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to lose 3 in a row. I think Khalil Rountree is going to end up clipping him in the 4th, 5th round and possibly knock him out.
Wow, my dogs are barking. They might disagree with you, Mike, but I'll tell you who does, agree with you. It's me. It's me. And I got to state bias off the bat. And it's generally not to name drop folks, but I'm also a big believer in stating the biases. And, you mentioned when Khalil was 300 pounds. Yeah, I knew Khalil back then, man. We were at the Rockin' Java here in Las Vegas at hardcore shows. I was a straight edge kid with long hair looking like a wild Native American. And he was like, yeah, 300 pounds of piercing, smoking cigarettes. Like both of us were unrecognizable. I'm not 300 pounds or anything, but yeah, I probably gained the weight he lost and not any of the muscle. Yeah, Khalil has massively transformed, man. And again, there's pictures of us like even years later, back when he was in shape and fighting. Like we're at a Halloween party, we ran in the same circles. So there's Halloween parties where we're dressed up like the Reservoir Dogs with guns and shit and stuff. So it's like I don't want to talk S and be like, oh, I'm picking around, and then people are like, oh, he's buddies with him, and that's why. And it's so I got to state that. We're not like best of friends or whatever. We train at different gyms. He's obviously more at Syndicate in Thailand, and even at Thailand, he trains at different gyms that I train at over there. It's not like we'll talk about Nicholas Motta, where me and Nicholas Motta shared the same gyms from Bang Tao to Couture, maybe more relatable. But yeah, I don't share any of that. I have no insight on that. I'm just stating my bias here. But I do have a lot of, as per usual, I can show my work as far as my pick goes. And, we were talking about the power hand. And, for me, when I see a southpaw versus southpaw matchup, Mike, a lot of the principle I look for is who has the better lead hand, right? Because we see so many southpaws in MMA, because MMA striking is still, as much as it's advanced, that old stereotype, like a lot of these old stereotypes we push back on, like are sad. Some of them are sadly true. Like with MMA fighters striking being behind, not understanding certain basics like footwork or the jab, right? And footwork and the jab in particular, I think is going to be a big deal. Now, Jamahal Hill, it looks like he's got a more attractive and flowy lead hand, because again, your analysis was spot on, Mike, where I said the same thing, where it's like, I could see you criticizing him despite giving him those praises, because even though you're giving him the boxing centric praises, you also understand boxing and fundamentals, like I just said. So you were probably seeing all the holes that some of the commentators smartly picked up on when looking at Hill and what he leaves open, his low-handed retractions, his kind of high up chin. And I always said that I picked OSP out wrongly to beat him, right? Because I'm like, dude, this guy's got a susceptibility to he eats a disproportionate amount of left hands, right? And I was wrong in that fight, but sometimes you can't let the results sway you as a gambler, right? Especially if you have the read. And sure enough, Politan obviously has got an amazing left hook. So, oh wow, Dan, maybe not too ingenious there, but if you really go and watch the tape, regardless of stance, left hands can't miss Hill. He looks really good in the Klitz and Abreu fight, which ends in just like a couple minutes. And, it's overturned because Jamahal Hill gets tested positive for weed, which is silly or whatever. But what's more outlying about that competition is just, it was really fast. And, it looked good. Like he's jabbing to the head. He's jabbing to the body. He's using the lead hand like you'd like to see. But a lot of it is just, a lot of it's to set up that left, unless he's switching to orthodox, where Jamahal Hill actually gets a lot of his finishes. He'll actually switch orthodox and match orthodox for a majority of his finishes. If you go back and watch the tape, the Johnny Walker knockout, and even some of his like best moments, even if he doesn't get the finish when he rocks a guy, he gets him toward the cage and he'll shift to orthodox, almost like a poor man's Dustin Poirier, right? And he'll start bombing from the orthodox stance, because he's probably like a right-handed southpaw, like so many of us, like Poirier, myself, Chris Curtis, right? Right-handed southpaw. So you see that, which probably makes sense why a fellow, southpaw really messes him up, to the point where you look at the other fight Hill was in, where it was OSP. OSP is a switch who lists himself southpaw, but OSP likes the open stance as well, right? He doesn't like the southpaw versus southpaw either, which hurt him, because if you look at it, and Trevor Whitman smartly picked up on it, he said OSP can win this when he's southpaw, because every time he went southpaw, he was lighting Hill up and Hill didn't look as comfortable. And even if you look at Hill's fights, whether it's a win against Thiago Santos, switch stancer, or a loss in his last fight against Yuri Prochazka, switch stancer, both those guys barely switched to southpaw, but win or lose, when they did, they could not miss. In fact, that's where the early knockdowns to what led to the finish later in the fight for Prochazka were both triggered when he went to southpaw. He literally, maybe one, but possibly none, not even hyperbolic, did not miss one left hand Yuri Prochazka from the southpaw stance. and it just gave me that Leo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the gift with, oh, right there. We don't always get that when we're watching tape, right, Mike? But I know you've gotten it yourself sometimes, right? You don't want to force it, and it doesn't mean run to the bank, right? It doesn't guarantee a win in this game. That being said, if I'm not jumping on those, if I'm not going with those reads, what am I going with, right? And as far as lead hand goes, Rountree, along with his pacing, one of his improvements along with his pacing and defensive wrestling to certain extents has been his lead hand, his jab. Now, it's not as flexible or dynamic as Hill's, but he's got that, he's got that, who am I thinking of now? I was going to go with the boxing, he's got that George Foreman just telephone pole jab, right? Just powerful, right? Boom, sticks it out there. And then he's got the mean check hook as well. And then another thing I noticed, regardless of stance, before I kick it back to you, Mike, here, is kicking defense, regardless of stance, regardless of what point in his career. Jamahal Hill, unless it's a head kick, he doesn't defend body kicks well, and he doesn't defend leg kicks well at all. And Khalil Rountree has his best kicking performances in general, much less leg kicks against fellow southpaws, e.g. the Eric Anders fight, right? So I really like Rountree here, and I played him, but one thing I want to ask you about, Mike, again, footwork. I really respect your opinion, and you clearly went back to watch the tape. And one thing I noticed is that both Jamahal Hill's physical shape and his footwork, maybe his footwork technically isn't better, but he's moving so much better in that like first half of his UFC career. And even before the Achilles injury, his shape and his footwork starts to almost get more plodding. And I don't want to judge him off of his first fight back in that Prochazka fight, but he comes out, he's got a bit of the jiggle in the midsection. He's got both knee braces on, like vintage Randy Couture, and he did not look good out there. And his footwork was already criticizable prior to the injury. Is that something that you notice and worries you on the Hill side as well?
Yeah, well, it was for a couple of reasons. I had trauma surgery on my leg from shattering my talus bone, which is a high impact fracture. And even though I got all this hardware in there, and even though it's not going anywhere, it's probably stronger now than it was before I broke it, there's still a mental gap that tells you, like, you went through so much when you broke it. Is it okay? I didn't have my bounce and my step when I was sparring for a good year after that. And even though it was fine, like they would say, you go. I remember grappling, and I used to tie my leg up with this little red thing because I didn't want people to attack my ankles, even though you're not supposed to. It was just like letting them know, like, I'm injured here. And I wasn't. I was over it. Cast was off. I was good to go. But I'm not even fighting. You're not fighting at that level. They're fighting at a big time level, where there's money involved, there's championships involved, your career's involved. So there's a mental gap there, but also don't just rule out that he's still having issues with it. Achilles injury is a really big deal. It's a really, really big deal in football and baseball and basketball and everything. It's a very, very serious injury. And sometimes people just don't bounce back from it. But I think it's a multitude of both. Maybe it's still giving them a problem, but maybe it's just a big time confidence thing. And confidence will kill you if you don't have it in this sport. So I like Rountree. I think he proved a lot to himself in that loss. He proved that he could fight with the elite. He proved he could take punches from the elite, and he proved that he could have a really good account of himself. So moving forward, he has nothing to hang his head about. So I like him a lot in this spot, actually.
Yeah, I do as well. And Jamahal Hill did show some grappling to play devil's advocate there early in his regional career. Like, he actually looked like he knew his way around a single leg and does decent work from on top. He does have a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But again, if he hasn't been showing these skills, and we're talking about his Achilles, his movement being compromised, how good is his level changes going to be? He's probably still working on just getting his striking back up to what was par for him, right? So, I'm going with Rountree here as well. I got him at minus 120, which is, technically beating the line. It doesn't matter. The results is what ultimately matters. But yes, CLV is an important part of it or whatever. So if you can get that, good for you, I guess. But we'll see on fight day. But yeah, I did take Rountree minus 120 for 2 units. The under looked like an interesting parlay piece for a second for something else that we'll talk about here shortly. I know we went a bit in depth for this main matchup here, but it deserves it. So we'll keep the energy accordingly as we go down the card, folks. Timestamps will be included thanks to our amazing producers again, Jared and Dayton. But yeah, I got Rountree here. Let's go to the co-main event, Mike, shall we?
Yep.
All right, co-main event. And again, an actual co-main event. I know I give like crap about card formatting, which is important, right? We saw why having good main card openers are important when we had the big man three decision slot fest, to open up the main card there. And they, I argued since 2019, fight night co-main events have really almost been kind of meaningless for a lot of the bookings, right? This is a good co-main event, man. It's a weird booking. Both guys are coming off UFC 313. We got Rafael Fiziev, who opened as the favorite, now an underdog, plus 110, with Ignacio Bahamondes, minus 130 as your now favorite. Totals for this fight, Mike, 2.5 rounds, with the over 2.5 rounds at minus 170, under 2.5 rounds, plus 140. Not too bullish as far as predicting violence one way or the other. Probably a competitive striking fight from the analysis to the numbers alike. How are you seeing this one, Mike?
Yeah, when I first saw this line, I was like, plus 110, Fiziev plus 110, Jesus God. And I was like, this is pre-analysis, and you get excited. You're like, I think I got a nice little, little spot here. But then I started really breaking it down. You start, bringing yourself back down to earth. And the way I look at this fight, I mean, Fiziev is probably one of the cleanest strikers I've seen in a while in the UFC. And I've seen a lot of different strikers, but everything he does it's hard to say he's doing anything wrong, from the way he places his feet, the way he swivels his hips, the way he engages in his punches, how he ties things together, his kicks. Everything is just so fluid and clean. It's beautiful to watch, even defensively when he does that whole matrix things, when he goes back. Like, he's just so responsible of his weapons, and that's like, that comes with time. That's not instinct. That's not anything like, that's something like we say durability. You either have it or you don't. No, this is something that's just rerun over and over and over and over again for years, where it comes instinctual. And that's how good he is at striking. However, the one thing I will say about him is that's what he is. That's what you're going to get from Fiziev. You're always going to get that guy in there. You're not going to get a guy who's going to throw this new wrinkle in his game. You're not going to get a guy who all of a sudden he's going to shoot for a takedown. He's going to become a grappler. He's a guy that, when you go in there and you fight this guy, you're fighting one of the highest pedigree style strikers that you can fight. And if that's the way you're going to fight him, you're probably going to lose, unless you're an a la Justin Gaethje or something like that. That brings just a different toughness into the cage. But chances are Fiziev's going to bring you into a fight that probably you're not going to be able to swim out of. But if you bring something else, if you could bring something else to the table that can nullify that, he doesn't have many paths outside of his striking, outside of getting in the pocket, landing big shots, landing to the body with his kicks and stuff like that. Outside of that, that's what he is. When you look at Bahamondes, this is a guy who's got avenues to kind of curtail and detour around what he does really good. He's got the length. He has the cage IQ. He's got the great team around him. He's got grappling when he needs it. He's got range management. He's got power. He's got aggression when he needs it, and he knows how to pull the reins back when he doesn't need it. So it just all boils down to Fiziev, I feel like, is going to have success until Bahamondes kind of figures him out. And if he doesn't figure him out before he gets clipped with something, then yeah, we could have a problem. But I ultimately think that Bahamondes is just getting better and better and better, where Fiziev is what he is. Great striker. Awesome. But I think it ends there. I think he has a tendency to fade a little bit, down the stretch. If you're even giving him the fight that he wants, and he hasn't gotten you out of there. There's something about Bahamondes that I really, really like. And I understand he hasn't fought the level of opposition that Fiziev has. This is his test. This is the litmus test for him to see, like, really how good is this kid. And listen, it could all crash and burn. But the fact of the matter is, in this fight, I think that he's going to do enough to win. But my concern in this fight is that he's going to be a little bit hesitant. You know who you can pressure. You know who you can push forward. You know who you can take chances with. You can't take chances with Fiziev unless you have that kind of experience. You got that Justin Gaethje experience where your chin is going to last, where you've been in there with guys like that before. You could say, I've been here before. I swam here before. I could take it. He's really never been in this kind of water with an elite striker. I don't consider like Manny Torres and these guys elite striker. Like, when you're in there with a guy like Fiziev, it's a different animal. And I think he's going to back up a little bit. I think he's going to utilize his range a little bit more. He's going to show us that he really understands range management and dictating the terms of the fight. So I'm a little nervous that these two big names in a co-main might be a little bit boring. But I'm going to go with Bahamondes here. I'm going to say Bahamondes by decision.
My dogs are barking again, but I don't want to look too much into that, because if I do, that means we're both wrong in the main event, right? But so here's the crazy thing, man. our analysis is in line again, and for people like, oh, these guys are gonna agree. Like, no,
we don't
not
talk
necessarily.
all week, by the way.
Huh? Yeah, we don't always agree.
We don't talk.
Yeah,
we don't like when I call him for something, he calls me. It's like something totally different. Like we don't talk about our analysis at all.
Yeah. But this is a case of, and again, you're not saying you're bullish one way or the other, and I'm not, by the way, too. There are some things that I'm in the middle of taping this. I was kind of pretty much just finishing it, to be honest. But me, I really like to run through the comb with my OCD and shit. So I'm probably going to look at a couple more things just to dot a couple more I's, so to speak. But man, I actually had the same read, a similar read. However, I got a bit thrown off where I was just rewatching the Gaethje Fiziev 2 fight, the most recent ones. I didn't remember that one for some reason. Like, I think I hit Dunbar's number from doing this for like a decade, Mike. That I just even with Contender Series fights, like my coverage there, it's not pre-analysis, it's post-analysis, right? So I watch the fight, I write them down, I grade, I match make. And by the time the Contender Series fighter is booked, Mike, I don't even remember who they are. I'm like, who is this guy? I got to go and read, which by the way, you guys can too. It's a nice little notes, not just for my breakdowns, but for Contender Series guys. Type in so-and-so's name, grading the winners, MMA Junkie, and my articles will pop up for you. Maybe there might be a note or here that'd be useful. But yeah, man, like, so with this one, and Bahamondes is a Contender Series guy, but yeah, so this one I went back to watch the Fiziev 2 fight, Gaethje 2 fight. And I'm with you, like, when a fighter, if they're not showing certain things, and this is a good note for betting as well, whether you're doing analysis and scouting or betting, is that be careful of your expectations. Don't go in there and be like, oh, he could do this, right? Ask yourself, have we seen this fighter do this? Not could he do this? Have we seen them? And then ask further questions. How many times have we seen him do it? Was it effective when he did it? What kind of matchups did he do it in, right? And you really get down with that's how you really can be a nut with your analysis, right? Warning going that deep. But yeah, with that Fiziev fight, he was actually going for takedowns, and we forget he actually has a combat sambo background, not super accomplished. Like he has some regional accolades and championships, and you see, like I said with Jamahal Hill and a lot of these fighters, you see more of their grappling early on, and then kind of like even with the wrestlers that fall in love with their striking, that old adage from the mid-aughts wrestle boxers, right, Mike? Like we still see that version of human nature is what it is, right? It must be where you fall in love with your hands, and or you accumulate so many back and knee injuries. Another factor we were just talking about, right? From your back midsection to your lower extremities that really limit your wrestling, right? From your neck even can do that as well. And there are so many injuries that actually kind of funnel you into more of a striking game, which not a lot of people talk about. As far as that, it's not necessarily people falling in love with their hands. However, in his last fight, even on short notice, he was going for takedowns a whole bunch in the beginning and on a short notice too, when you think maybe he could tire tactically, maybe a poor decision, right? But it didn't seem to tire him. In fact, even on short notice and even in a losing effort, and commentary noticed this as well, Fiziev didn't look as tired going into it. He looked really trimmed too going into that fight. It looked like, even though it was short notice, it looked like he was preparing. And you're like, oh man, this is kind of a quick turnaround. Well, Bahamondes is making that quick turnaround too. Well, Bahamondes took like no damage, and Fiziev went through a war. He got dropped at one point from a short uppercut in the clinch by Gaethje, right? Like there's these red flags there where we're like, ooh, maybe it's bad. But at the same time, especially with these strikers, maybe more than wrestlers, grapplers, or inherently born MMA fighters, but strikers more so are used to, especially the kickboxers and the Muay Thai guys, particularly more than boxers even, right, Mike? They're used to competing a lot, and they arguably can do better at that range. So maybe it's a little of that. But honestly, this feels like a trap fight, man. Like signs are pointing to Bahamondes. I get, especially like if you got the opener, Bahamondes at plus money, I totally get that. But this feels like a trap fight, Mike. How many times have we seen, again, very similar scenario where we're like, this guy's got the hype, and even if it's like deserved hype, right? Like we can be like, he actually, to your point, Mike, right? Like he is showing improvements as he should as a 27-year-old, right? Even if the reasoning's there, how many times have we seen this trap spot where, it not just, the hype guy or whatever, because again, it's not like we're having Bahamondes minus 700. I want to be careful about, that narrative. But at the same time, the narrative of, quick turnaround, older guy, he got rocked in the last fight and they fought on the same date and Bahamondes didn't. Like, how many times have we come in there and we're like, this guy's it's a really bad move. This guy's chinny. He's coming off of a war. And then he goes like a decision and ends up winning it. And or win or lose, like, withstands the shots or something. Like, there's so many times like that. And I also want to bring up that Fiziev is one of 3 local fighters that represent Azerbaijan. Obviously, Fiziev spent a lot of his time in Kyrgyzstan, where he cross-trained with Shevchenko, and then, trains a lot Tiger Muay Thai over in Thailand. But heritage-wise and birth and all that stuff, he's one of 3 fighters there. And I will say this. I'm not saying I'm picking against him. I'm not saying it'll be this way. But boy, do I have a sneaky suspicion that I know the odds flipped on this one. Fiziev was initially the favorite. But I have a feeling that the odds could be wrong. Spoiler alert, where I'm maybe leaning on all the Azerbaijan representatives. I'm actually leaning toward Fiziev. I'm not sure if I'm going to hit that number or not, but I will say this. Even if I pick Bahamondes, who is a sensible favorite, a sensible pick, I'm not even bringing up the 6'3", my little thing where like to fade the guy, because again, I usually don't look to fade big weight cutters until they start to hit their 30s. Bahamondes still 27, so he could probably still kill his body and get away with it, as big as he is, right? But yeah, man, I feel like this is a dog or pass spot. I will say, no matter where you land. Any dissension as far as that statement goes, Mike?
No, I think it's pretty much a pick 'em. I do. I think it's pretty much a pick 'em. I'm just going with the guy that I feel like can make a couple more adjustments. That is still in growth. He showed me enough to know that he will be competitive in this fight, even though we don't know what he's done since then. But I just think if this kid progresses more, he can be really, really good.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say before we push on this one is I do think Fiziev, I'm not depending on him for the takedowns, but I think even though he got hurt in the clinch, I think he could be the better clinch fighter here.
But does he want to take Bahamondes down? Bahamondes has got a sneaky, nasty submission.
Yes. Great point. Yeah. But so my more edge, I think, is I see the body kicks and the leg kicks. And
I actually think Bahamondes will invite that.
Sure. Yeah. Especially with his guard skills or whatnot. But I think that the striking, the body, legs, and the left hands is something that I think will be available. We saw that with both from a southpaw stance and Ludovic Klein in his loss, as well as McDessie. And these were shorter, compact guys, both of his losses, but they were both technical strikers like Fiziev, right? Now, for Fiziev to beat Gaethje, part of me, why I was really reluctant and I didn't pick him last time, is because I thought he can counter. He's a really good striker. But is he enough of a counter fighter? Because a counter fighter is a real kryptonite to a guy like Gaethje, right? And looking at Bahamondes' last loss and his losses to McDessie, the common thread is counters. So again, we're faced with the same question where he's a technical striker. No one's questioning that, right, Mike? He can counter, but is he enough of a impactful counter striker to make a difference? Because I think that could be a quiet crux of this matchup. Not as much as the Gaethje one. I think he's more within range of winning this one, more of a chance of winning this one than he does with Gaethje. But I think that's going to be something to look out for. So I'll take Fiziev. We'll see if I end up staying on that or locking in a play or whatnot. We got Curtis Blaydes minus 270, Rizvan Kuniev plus 220. Of course, he's coming off Contender Series. He had a bunch of booking issues, so we haven't seen him for a minute. The total for this heavyweight fight, Mike, is set at 2.5 rounds with the over plus 105, the under minus 135. So they are predicting a finish here, not heavily, but they are predicting a finish. What are you predicting, Mike?
So when I look at this fight, the one thing I want to get out of everybody's head, and listen, I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but people go into a Curtis Blaydes fight, especially from a DraftKings perspective, right? Let's talk about a DraftKings perspective for a second. And they say takedowns. They're athletic heavyweight, and he's got takedowns, and he's got a takedown upside. This is all true. But if you look at the resume of his career, he had 14 takedowns in one fight in 2020. Okay, since then, he's had 3 takedowns. Now, I know that sounds like a nutty stat. You're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Since 2020, right. He had 14 takedowns against Volkov. 14. And then everybody got it registered in their mind. Oh, my God, takedowns. This is a DraftKings savant. Then he had 3 takedowns since then, and it was in one fight. So he had multitude of fights where he had no takedowns, Now, mind you, I get it. There were knockouts in the first round. There were finishes in the second round. But at the end of the day, for 5 years, he had like 3 takedowns. You know what I mean? So when you look at that stat and you're like, well, that's kind of interesting, And when I look at Kuniev, he scares me. And he scares me for a couple reasons. One reason, just the way his genetic somatotype is. If you look at a person's genetic somatotype and you look at people who are naturally big, like if you go onto the street and you see these guys that are all juiced up and jacked up, you could tell by their wrists, you could tell by their calves, you could tell by their ankles. If are these guys naturally big guys, or are they just like, are they just, they blown up? Kuniev is a naturally thick dude. He's got thick quads, thick calves, thick ankles, thick wrists. Like he's a naturally well-proportioned, just thick guy. He's a naturally strong guy. And his style of fighting translate with that. He's a guy who, if you watch the fight against when he fought Ferreira in the PFL, he was grinding him against the cage. He was soaping him up. He was, he got taken down once. He was able to get his hips loose in reverse position. He has a very good way to center his weight, use his weight distribution, and just make you fucking miserable in there. Not flashy. He's not a guy that you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch him fight. But he is a guy that could give you fucking problems. And when I look at Blaydes, I look at a clean athlete. I look at a guy who moves well. He's fast. He's sharp. He's got good power. He's got good range when he uses it. He has the wrestling pedigree if he can get it going. But the biggest thing with him is his decision-making, and his chin scares me. His decision-making scares me at times, and his chin scares me a lot of the times. Should he win this fight? 1,000%. Curtis Blaydes should win this fight. But just from, like I said, from a DraftKings perspective, if you're looking 9,100, are you willing to bet 9,100 on Blaydes in this fight? Where does he have the upside? 100% he has the upside to blow that number out of the park. But when I look at a guy like Kuniev, who he should lose this fight, but he does have the attributes to give you a lot of fucking problems, that $7,100 starts to look tempting after a while. Because he doesn't need to do much. He doesn't need to finish the fight. He just needs to get some control time, grind you against the cage, make you uncomfortable, make you carry his weight. If you start getting off on him, close that gap and shut you down. All things that he's very capable of, just like he did to Ferreira. So I'm looking at this fight and I'm picking Curtis Blaydes, but I'm going to tell you guys the reason why I brought all this stuff about Kuniev, and you probably thought I was going to curtail and pick Kuniev, even though I'm not. It's caution tape. I'm giving you guys heavy caution tape here because this is a fight where I can see going awry really quickly. So I'm going to pick Blaydes here. I'm going to have confidence that he's going to have some cage IQ here. He's going to do the right thing, that he will be successful, maybe securing a takedown. I think he would be better off maybe standing in space and striking with him a little bit. I think he is the cleaner striker, the longer striker. He carries a lot of pop in his hands. But like I said, you don't know with him. He's almost like a raccoon, dude. You just don't know what he's going to do next. You don't know how close you can get to him. You don't know if he's going to snap or not. Like he's a very good fighter that doesn't make great decisions. And that concerns me. So I'm picking him here, but I'm here. Beware that Kuniev to me is live in this spot.
You know what? Yeah, that's probably exactly why I didn't pull the trigger. Because part of me was almost going to pull the trigger on either the under for this fight, or similar to the argument you made for the DraftKings line, you could maybe arguably make for the betting line, where not only does Blaydes have the skills to cover, even it being a heavyweight MMA fight and its volatility, can make that minus 270 in hindsight look like, wow, that was like the most solid parlay piece that I should have been on the card, right? In hindsight, I'm saying he could, I'm saying, right? But to your point, it's fight IQ. And that saved me when avoiding or fading guys, as far as like, what was the other Jamahal guy? Got toe-holded by Pat Sabatini. Emmers, terrible fight IQ. Always got great lines, but terrible fight IQ. And that's a real dangerous combination, right, Mike? And you're talking about that perfectly right here with Blaydes. That being said, I'm really not impressed with Kuniev. He's a Wushu Sanda guy and doesn't look like it. Wushu Sanda, you get a lot of round kicks, spinning side kicks, opportunistic takedowns, but not much of layers to go off of it. And I know he's a heaviveight, so it's like, oh, what do you expect from him, Dan? It's like, no. Remember Dagestani Randy Couture, huh? Shamil Abdurrahimov, remember that guy? Doggy Randy. That guy was a Wushu Sanda guy, and he actually looked like it with his style. Very light on the feet. He had the kicks, the body kicks, this and that. This guy doesn't look like it. He's also a Goretz fight team guy, which has a lot of Russian hand-to-hand combat and MMA specialist guys. And his accolades, he's got a lot of MMA background, regional. Amateur and pro. But again, you look at the guys from the Goretz fight team, it's like Rashid Magomedov. He's more like a Ramzan Ameev, I guess, as far as because he is very functional, to his credit, like you said, Mike. But he doesn't have even the swag of the guy, the swag or striking savvy from the guys of his team. Everything he does is really raw. It's functional, but it's very raw looking. It's not the most pretty to look at. And I agree with you that he's a big guy, and that's part of the reason why I like Blaydes in the spot, because if you look at his record, I think he's used to being that big guy, Rizvan, you know? And if you look at my write-up on him, I really didn't think he had, as I said, he didn't have the Riz to me in that fight, but I understood why the UFC signed him, obviously. And you go back to his losses even, and one was against Justin Willis, who was like, man, you losing to that guy? Like, that's pretty bad. Like, remember that guy's cup of coffee he had in the UFC. And then he also lost to Darko Stosic, who was like a light heavyweight, a middleweight who was fighting at light heavyweight, a low output one at that. So it was just, I mean, and those were his losses. I know those were a while ago, you know, but again, I think this guy is used to being the top cat. We still, you know, there's no contest with Renan Fajeda when you go back and watch that fight. That's probably like his most useful sample size. I know you're like, oh, he fought UFC Anthony Hamilton before that. Like, again, no disrespect, but you can even rewind that to Anthony Hamilton's prime like 10 years ago. Maybe you get maybe that same result. You know, that's kind of what that dude's been susceptible to, first round subs and fallout. So even from that aspect, it's hard to see, you know, where he'd be getting too much respect from, and he's not. But to your point, this is heavyweight. Blaydes can really fumble the ball, which is why part of me was looking at that under, right? But I'm back to team fuck unders personally. I hate unders. I'm a big over guy, and I've been recently doing unders lately, and I'm just like, oh, unders in first rounds. You know, I can't tell you how many people that I see like bet go heavy on first rounds. Like it's gonna be a guarantee, Mike. And I don't know about you, Mike, but to me, I hate predicting that. One, I just have a ridiculously horrible record predicting those. But people hit them all the time seemingly. They're like, easy money. And I'm like, really, was it? And two, it's also like the most disrespectful thing from like a martial artist to an analyst to predict, because no matter how you frame it, you're basically telling one guy like, oh yeah, you're going to get washed around. You know, like that's how it feels to me. So anyway, sorry, side tangent there, but let's move on unless you got anything more to say about that fight.
No, I think we covered a lot with that. I think we're good.
All right.
There's a reason why you demand the best information, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people, just like you and I. They have over 100 offices and more than 1,000 lawyers nationwide. When you hire the wrong law firm, you may be beat before you start. All law firms are not the same. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/doggerpass or dial #law, #529 from your cell phone. That's FOR thepeople.com/doggerpass or #law, #529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement.
All right, this fight I'm excited about. Miktybek Orolbai, -175. Tawfiq Musayev, who is the risen lightweight champion, he's fought all over the place, +145. Totals for this is 1.5 rounds, over -230, under +190. I'm curious what you have to say about this fight, Mike, but for me, real quick, I'll just say that both these guys, this is a fight that I'm not looking to bet at all. I'm just looking to enjoy. I'm leaning toward the Orolbai side. You know, but I'm curious to see what side you're leaning toward and why here, Mike.
Yeah, you know, I've watched Musayev for a bit, and he's explosive, man. The guy is explosive, and the one thing I do like about him is the way he utilizes his kicks. He's very kick heavy, and he slides in with his kicks. He slides in with his strikes. So it's not necessarily that he's throwing them within your range already. They're very deceptive because it looks like he's out of range, and he kind of slides in with everything. So. And they're explosive when he does it. They're not just to tag you. They're there to cause intent. And that could throw your depth perception off because you're not sure when is he going to throw it, how is he going to throw it, what is he going to throw. So that I do like about him. But there were a couple fights. I forget, was it Damien? Who did he fight in that one film that I was watching? Damien. I forget his name. But he dropped him, and now at the point in time he was an older fighter, you know what I mean, and he ends up, and mind you guys, he's no youngster. This kid was born in like 89. He's no youngster, but he was fighting somebody whose his career was kind of, I forget his name.
Brown.
Damian Brown. He fought Damian Brown, and his career was tough guy. Damian Brown's always been a tough guy, very, very tough, very gritty, but never like that top echelon guy. He's kind of middle of the way. If you fought him, you knew you were getting into a fight, but when he fought, Musayev drops him and decides not to jump in his guard. And I'm like, well, that's kind of strange. Like, you dropped him. Like, why? What are you doing? What are you standing up for? And everything I've seen, he's much more comfortable on the feet. He's much more, you look at his name, you look at the way he looks, and you think like, well, this guy's going to be a nasty Dagestani kind of style wrestler. He's going to lace your legs up. He's going to take your limbs away. But he's more of a striker. Like, he's almost like Umar Nurmagomedov. Like, he can do it if he wants to, but he's much more comfortable on the feet. And when I look at that style against someone like Orolbai, who is going to have an opportunity to catch these kicks and drop him and get on top of him and put some weight, some heavy hips on him and just wrestle him, and just to see the punishment that Orolbai went through, the amount of damage you got to put on this guy to make this guy go away. It's astonishing. You know what I mean? So it's like, does Musayev have that? Yeah, he does. But I've also seen him in certain fights where he becomes the counter striker, where he's not the hunter anymore. He becomes kind of the hunted. So you kind of got to wonder, like, is he, which one are we going to see? Are we going to see the hunter? I don't think so. I think we're going to see more of the passive, aggressive, counter striker, because he's going to be fearing the wrestling from Orolbai. He's going to be fearing getting taken down, getting that top pressure, and having to work his way out. So he's might become a little bit of a matador, and he's going to be throwing those kicks at range. And I think Orolbai's going to just catch him. I think he's going to catch him. I think at some point in every round, he's going to get his top control. He's going to get his paws on him. He's going to drag him to the ground, and it's just going to be a minute thing. I don't know if he's going to finish him, but I do think that it's going to be just minutes. It's going to be the control of minutes of him coming in, sliding in, getting caught, not getting caught with a punch, but getting his leg caught, getting, some kind of body lock, inside trip, taking him down and riding him out. And I think that's how he wins this fight. So I'm going to go Orolbai by a decision.
Beautiful breakdown. I will say, I great reference with the Damian Brown fight. That's about when Tafik Musayev kind of came onto my radar, and been watching him since. And he's another guy, again, to tie in my analysis, and it ties in with your analysis that you gave on Tafik, which is he's another Wushu Sanda guy that I just talked about. But he doesn't look like a Wushu Sanda guy, right? He almost looks more like a wrestle boxer, right? Tafik. But to your point, whether it's a knockdown or a takedown, you didn't see him pursue, right, Mike? That's been kind of especially earlier on in his career, he's gotten a little bit better. His ground game obviously has gotten better. He suffered a lot of submission losses, but like I said, Wushu Sanda, even though there's striking and takedowns and trips and catch kicks and all these things that score, and you see this again with the guys like Shamil Abdurakhimov, they would almost look lost on the ground. Like, it was really weird. They look so fluid. They could transition from kicking to punching to clinching to tripping range, and now they're on top. You're like, wow, they just went through 4 phases, Mike, but not to look completely lost on the ground. And you look at Musayev's, coincidentally, submission losses, right? And so I was leaning toward Orolbai because I do think that he is the better MMA wrestler and the better overall ground fighter, from the wrestling to the newaza, the ground fighting, right? But I think there's going to be holes in the striking as well, because we've seen Tafik. He is reckless, as explosive as he is. He will kind of leap in. Now, he's been improving his striking, like a lot of people from these regions of the world. Again, he's another one of the Azerbaijan natives, one of 3 on the card, right? By the way, and we're seems like we're both picking against this one. Back to my point, where I don't know if it's going to be the greatest homecoming, which sometimes you see, right? When they went to Chile before they had Ignacio Bahamondes, who we just talked about, they had another guy, I forget Diego something, but he was like a complete fraud. He was like a -400 favorite to Guido Canetti, and I'm like, I'm going to hit this. But everyone's like, oh, he's the hometown fighter. He can't lose, right? And not only did he lose, he got washed out. And not trying to pick on that guy. He had a great story. I think he came back from cancer and stuff. So not trying to pick on that guy, but I remember it was a beautiful cash, right? So just because they're fighting in the hometown doesn't mean they're guaranteeing a winning. I know people like to put the tinfoil hats and be like, no, they got the judges paid off. It's like, no, they're there because the UFC needs to fill their schedule. And if they can, they will they will try to put local fighters there to sell the tickets, right? And then be draws. So I don't think it's anything deeper than that, folks. You know, I love the tinfoil hats, but you know, sometimes we gotta pump the brakes on that. But you look, speaking of training in Thailand, though, you know who else has been training in Thailand outside of Team Alpha Male, where he normally trains at? That is Orolbai. He's been training in Thailand, except, you know, a little bias here. He's been training in my second home gym there, Bang Tao Muay Thai. And definitely not a bad place to train, especially, you know, to improve your range game and whatnot. And I even just watching him strike and stuff, and I don't try to take too much from pads or training footage, but like watching his footage, you know, for the past year, because he took decent time off, Orolbai did. I'm like, wow, is it just me? I know it's different when they're in the fight, but his striking is looking a lot smoother. So I like that read from you, Mike. I'm going to get Orolbai here, but this fight just seems so crazy, and I'm so like excited for it. I almost don't want to pollute it with a bet. But if any angles comes to mind, feel free to shout. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next fight. All right, this one I'm excited about, Mike. I'm really excited about. We got the third and final Azerbaijan representative fighting a big favorite, Nazim Sadykhov. Naz minus 500 going against Nicholas Iron Motta plus 350. The totals here 1.5. So it's going to be over 1.5 is set at minus 135 with the under 1.5 plus 105, which to me says it's a violent fight that they don't know where it's going to go. However, the money line tells you that Nazim Sadykhov is winning this fight at a very high clip. Before I throw it to you, Mike, I will say spoiler alert and bias mention again, like I mentioned before, even though I'm not like super tight with Motta or whatever, but like, you know, we do share the same gyms and running those similar circles that way. And he's been kind of a money train for me. Now I picked him. I bet against him when he came in against Jim Miller, right? By the way, Nicholas Motta, he's 1-1 against UFC level southpaws. That loss, of course, was to Jim Miller, and that's Jim fucking Miller. Okay,
my guy.
He's the man, right? And I would even go so far, which I have, and I did a top 10 southpaw strikers in the UFC. I did throw Jim Miller in there, and I'm not going to go into the rant, but I can actually back that up. With one of the first calf kick guys, arguably could have beaten Poirier.
Dude, I'll tell you a quick Miller story.
Please, from a Jersey guy, please bless us.
We were training at this place called Planet Jiu-Jitsu in East Hanover, New Jersey, and it was me, Jim Miller, his brother Danny Miller. I don't know if you remember Danny Miller.
Yeah, Dan Miller.
And Danny Miller was getting ready for a fight in reality fighting in it was reality fighting Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. So, you know, he was getting fresh bodies in on him, and we were grappling. I think he was fighting. He wasn't fighting Mike Macenzio. Was he fighting Dante Rivera? I think he was fighting Dante Rivera.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And dude, I had him in my guard, and I Comored him from guard, and it sounded like this was like 2 weeks before his fight, and it sounded like a fucking accordion, dude. And I thought I felt terrible. Thank God he wasn't hurt, dude. But that was when I started realizing, like, you know, I got to take it easy when they're 2 weeks out. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh!
But I was
more from a gorilla like you.
Realize how long ago this was. I mean, Danny and Jimmy were still in reality fighting. Jimmy wasn't even in the UFC.
That's pre-IFL. That's pre-IFL.
Yeah, so I was still kind of fresh at it too, and I was just like trying to prove a point. I'm like, I'm fucking gonna try. You know, and dude, I felt so bad. I remember the gym got fucking because he rolled over, and I was like, bro, you all right? He's like, yeah, I'm good. And he was fine, thank God. But yeah, that was a good time. That gym was a good time.
Dude, wow. Miller brothers, dude. Dan Miller, that guillotine where we almost took the guy's head off in the IFL. That's legendary. And that was pre that. Yeah, good thing you didn't hurt him too bad because we wouldn't have got that highlight, Mike. But yeah, of course I picked Jim Miller to beat, Nicholas Motta. In Motta's defense, he was an extreme couture. He was gym hopping, right? And this is kind of, close to that pandemic part, right? Where that, that year and a half, like, I try not to weigh too heavily on some results because so many people were thrown off for their training and all this stuff, right? Just taking fights to survive. It was wild times. And he gets like a kind of a short notice gimme against Cameron Van Camp, beats him, right? And now this fight was actually on a semi-short notice as well. And this was he just got to Extreme Couture at this time, loses to Manuel Torres. Now, I'll mind you, in both these losses, right, he actually rocks both guys, Manuel Torres and Jim Miller, early in the fight. So even in these fights where he's going out devastatingly, he almost wins these fights when you go back and watch the tape. Now, even though he's technically 1-1 against UFC level southpaws, I will say, folks, Manuel Torres was getting lit up from orthodox, And when he went southpaw, he hits him with this crazy long elbow that probably shouldn't have landed and just puts Motta out. So even though he's only 1-1 against southpaws, he did get knocked out twice from the southpaw stance. All right. So the next fight, you get a real buy low spot. I bet him against Trey Ogden. I get bailed out with that no contest. He was losing that fight. However, it's that emotional bias you see, right? And, you see it sometimes deservedly, maybe with guys like Cody Brundage, who it's like you never want to bet on his fights again because no offense to the guy, I actually sympathetic to him, but it's like anyone who's going to, look for, ways out or look to the ref anytime he gets hit. It's like, you don't want nothing to do with that fight, right? A lot of people probably got burned on the KO prop. Not me, but a lot of people probably did, right? Whereas, people were treating Motta like public enemy number one, and they still treat him that way. The market's faded him ever since. And Tom Nolan, even though he surprised me against Vyacheslav Borisov, which will kind of tie in a weird MMA math way, I am not high on him at all. I was all in on Motta. Big cash plus money. Thank you. Hire Mahashate. Again, they made him another decently sized dog in that fight. Took him again. And one of the things I said was like, Nicholas Motta's weaknesses is wrestling and a range striking game. This motherfucker spent the last 3 years training at Extreme Couture and Bangtao Muay Thai. Like, again, and I said this picking him. I'm like, I'm not saying he's going to win a championship. I'm not even saying he's a top 10 or will be a top 10 fighter. But I'm saying the number doesn't match the fighter. And we're talking about trajectory. The guy showing these improvements every time out, showing the grappling improvements, getting Mahachate's back, defending takedowns better, pacing himself better, showing better kicks. Now he's mainly kicking the legs, but that's actually not going to necessarily be bad because Sadykhov, kind of like Jamahal Hill, because it's very, a southpaw, very boxing centric southpaw. The kick defense is a bit suspect there, and the leg kick defense is not great. He's got good radar for the head, and he's almost too confident there, which again, I'm a huge Sadykhov fan, by the way. Let me get this out there. I'm a big fan of his style. If you wanted to define a fighter who's like my style, it's like, oh, give me a southpaw who's shoulder rolling and just flowing. He's not afraid to be in a hell of a fight. He can take what his opponent gives and kind of give back. That being said, Nazim Sadykhov, and something I've highlighted, and it doesn't mean you're right every time as far as result goes, but these are important trends, especially if you want to back these guys as favorites, is that he tends to fight in close margins. You go back and you look at his fight against Evan Elder, and he was losing that fight on the cards until he gets a cut 38 seconds into round three. Round three wasn't even really playing out. Now, he was winning round three for that 38 seconds. He was winning the exchanges. He came out hot, right? He cut him with a legal blow. Props to Nas. But again, he was losing that fight. Against Terrence McKinney was able to get his back and hold around until, McKinney crumbles like he always does, right? So it's like that kind of was inevitable. Borisov, who I'm a big fan of Borisov, but even I got to admit, Borisov has been looking more toward the shot territory. And I don't not ever, but I seldomly use this guy's washed, this guy's shot, or anything like that. But Borisov has been actually showing the signs of it. Not so much in his output, although his output has gone down. His dynamism has gone down. Explosivity has gone down. But Borisov, we're seeing like little shots from Chase Hooper, who's been improving. I don't want to take anything away from him, but you look at like kind of where, like just at the end, and sometimes that can be enough to knock a guy down. I'm not saying it's not, and these are shots that looks like he could see coming as well, especially for a guy that really depends on his eyes. He's got that real style that hooks to the body and whatnot. And Borisov was winning that fight too. He won rounds 1 and 3. And even though he got 10-8'd in round 2, he was actually winning the majority of the round and finished the round landing hard counters in the last 2 exchanges. In my opinion, and I'm a big 10-8 guy, and that should be a 10-8 in a just world. But if we're talking about in the world of what we see from the judges week to week, folks, and for what it's worth, I am somebody who's actually taken him past the courses and over here at the ABC in Las Vegas. I don't just talk shit. That we've seen rounds that close not be a 10-8. And I disagree. It should be a 10-8. They got it right, folks. I'm just saying it was a very fortunate 10-8. It shouldn't be a fortunate 10-8, but it was a very fortunate 10-8. And that was just to get a draw. And then he fights Ismail Bonfim, who I don't want to, talk crap. The Bonfim brothers are still young, but we've kind of seen both those brothers kind of be on, some rough ceilings, and even the wins they get, not necessarily the greatest, especially since, Luque left that camp. Maybe Luque left that camp for a certain reason, maybe because there was a ceiling there, and we are now seeing the Bonfim brothers who stayed behind in Brazil hitting that ceiling. But again, how much do we take off of it? Do we take it off of it that he's now a minus 500? Well, and outside, even in the McKinney fight, McKinney had his moments, so it's hard for me to say it covers the line here. Now, again, I'm a big fan of Sadykhov. He is the deserved favorite. He will probably win this fight, but minus 500, I don't think I'm crazy, and I don't think it's my bias speaking when I say be cautious. It may be my bias speaking that put one unit down on Nicholas Motta at plus 350. I had to go first on this one because it was a contrarian take, and this one, I wouldn't be surprised that we're on opposite sides on for good reason, Mike. But what do you got for this one, bud?
Yeah, I'll make my kind of simple. You touched pretty much on everything, so I'll just say this: I look at Nicholas Motta as a guy who I think is good, but when you watch him fight, you're like, what is he really great at? You know what I mean? And the one thing I will say is he's tough. He's very, very tough. And when when you fight Nicholas Motta, like, okay, I got a guy in front of me who can do a little bit of everything. Like he's got the ability to do a little bit of everything, but his toughness, his ability to move forward, take some damage, it's appealing, especially in a fight where he's going. Like he's not going to back up, he's not going to run around, he's not going to try to elude you. He's going to try to fight. From hell or high water, the kid's going to try to fight. So I respect that about him. But there comes a time where things just surpass him, and I think that Sadykhov is a guy who 1,000% you're correct. He does sometimes fight up and down to the level of his opposition. He'll let people in the fight that shouldn't be in the fight, or he'll fight greater to people where you're like, wow, I actually didn't think he was going to fight this well. So he kind of does fight up and down, but he has it. He has something where you can build upon. He's got much more room to grow. He has shown brighter, more ace of spades spots in all aspects of MMA. I just think he's the better overall MMA fighter. So when I look at that, when I look at a guy he's pretty good, everywhere. He's pretty tough, and he belongs in the UFC. He's kind of fringy belonging there. And then you get a guy in Sadykhov who you have something to build on. Like you got building blocks there. Like there's a couple adjustments you need to make, some oil in the bearings, tighten a bolt here, loosen a bolt there, and you have a pretty good fighter. And I just think that's where I stand on this fight. I think from top to bottom in MMA, I just think Sadykhov is a better fighter. So do I like that minus 500? No. Can he go out there and look like a minus 500 in this fight? I'm confident he actually can. But like I said, Nicholas Motta is not a guy who's going to make it fucking easy. Like he's not going to allow you just to roll him without a fight. So it does draw me back. It's not a guy that I'm going to be throwing in parlays. I don't usually do that anyway, but minus 500s and 600s, I think it's useless. Doesn't move the line to left. But I do see Sadykhov winning this fight. I think if Sadykhov comes with his ace and he comes with his A game, I think he can finish him, or I think he could 30-27 him.
Yeah, I think he could definitely be a downhill spot to your point too, where it's just like, oh wow, there's the skill difference, right? This and that, and you hope so, because Sadykhov's a guy who's been talked about and praised by Longo for a minute in that whole camp. Like he's been the guy, like, oh Nas, Marab and Aljo even are like, oh Nas, right? But again, I still got to see it, and I haven't seen the. I almost worry that Nas waits for the perfect shot, whereas Motta, he's got to punch his chance in everything he throws. And that is honestly part of the reason why I'm picking him here, because his left hand has always been his money shot. And we're going to push on the breakdown here, folks. I don't want to go back into it, but what I say about the southpaw killer, it's that left hand, and a guy just with that. And I do this too. I'm just a big shoulder roll guy. Believe me, I love it. I will defend it, but boy, would it make me clench my butt cheeks as a Sadykhov backer. So I don't expect you guys to go crazy like me. The totals feel like a trap. I will say I couldn't find a number on it, but before we move on, I will say something to look for. Fight ends in KO might be worth a look, regardless of what side you like, right? I think that might be the only thing worth a look in that fight, to be honest. Unless you're crazy like me and you're back in Motta. All right, next fight. Muhammad Naimov, minus 275. Bogdan Grad, come back on him, plus 225. Over 1.5 rounds, minus 260. Under 1.5 rounds, plus 200. So they think it's going to be violent, but they really don't know where it's going to go because they're making it a 1.5 with that kind of a spread, right? I'll just say this. I'll keep it quick for this breakdown for me, Mike. I'll just say I do lean to the side of Naimov, but again, what do we say about guys who fight close? Naimov is arguably worse at it, probably worse at it than Sadykhov. That's a bad word to use. It sounds really negative, but you get what I'm saying. He fights close. I don't like it. Bogdan Grad feels live, but I still haven't seen enough from Bogdan Grad at this level to where, even at a good number, I can go lay him confidently. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, this is kind of a carbon copy of the last fight, just on a different level, on a deeper level. Bogdan Grad is a guy, dude, who, I mean, what does he really do that's all that good? I mean, he's like, he reminds me of like a Darren Elkins in a way. Like he's kind of like a minus athlete, not the greatest movement. Like he doesn't have these crazy tendencies or athleticism, but this dude, as long as he's breathing, he knows he has a chance. And that's what's carried him in his career. I mean, look at his last fight. I mean, there were points in time where he looked like he was getting beaten from pillar to post, and all of a sudden, this kid just turns the tables and he turns in. And I love that in a fighter. That's what I love in a fighter, because they want to be there. They're fighting for pride. The kid's got that. The kid's got that inside him, and that's something that's instilled in you. That's nothing that you can teach. You either have that or you don't, and he has that. But the problem with that, on the flip side, is once you get to a certain level, you need more than that. You need more than hard. Like Darren Elkins has done it for years. I mean, he goes in there, he beats guys that he's supposed to beat, but then you give him a little uptick in competition. He has a good account of himself, but he just doesn't have that like technical ability to get in on somebody who's a really clean striker. If he can't get the takedown, he's in trouble. And that's why I look at Bogdan Grad. Like Bogdan Grad he's going to take advantage of you in so many ways if you get tired. If you get tired and you leave a window open for him to jump through, he will start abusing you. And that's what I see with him.
Yeah.
But then I look at the other side of Naimov, and I'm not a big Naimov guy. I don't think Naimov's like this big prospect, but he's athletic. He's got sharp hands. He's got good movement. He's a little bit more technical. So providing he doesn't get tired, providing he stays on his bike and he kind of just plays that cat and mouse game with Grad, I think Grad is going to have an issue, and I think he's going to get marked up, and I think he's going to get cut up, and I think he's going to continue to push forward. Like the kid's not going to stop until he's not breathing anymore. But I just think at a certain level, it gets to the point where, okay, like it was a great run. You got a great heart. You're going to fight. You're going to always be in exciting fights. But when you fight these guys that are a little bit more athletic, a little bit more technical, their camps are a little bit more privy to what kind of style you bring, you're going to get exposed, and you're going to get exposed in a big way. So I think this is a fight that Naimov wins. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think his athleticism, his technicalities and stuff are going to kind of, carry him through.
Yeah, Naimov also has a really big following, in Tajikistan. So that's probably why he's on the main card. Although I'm glad they used a 145 card to open it, though I probably would have used Sadykhov Motta to open it, to be honest. Neither here nor there. Let's move it down to the prelims. The featured prelim is Seokyeon Ko, plus 400 on the Korean Mike Tyson there. I think that's one of his nicknames, unofficially or something, versus Oban Elliott, minus 600. This was a reshuffled fight where they both had different opponents a few weeks ago, a little over a month ago, I believe. And they got bumped back to this card. So it's not short notice. If anything, it's longer notice with the totals in this fight. The over 2.5, minus 145, under 2.5 rounds, plus 115, which means they don't really know where it's going to go, if we're going to go to the distance or not. They do seem to know that Oban Elliott's going to win. Oban Elliott has a lot of hype on him. And initially, maybe because I mixed him up with Tom Nolan, I'm like, oh, this is another overhyped guy for no reason that I can fade. And Oban Elliott actually has some skills to him. He trains, cross trains with a lot of folks, over in the UK. I don't know how many southpaws he's training with, because Ko is a southpaw, and Elliott, I still got to do he's the last person on my unofficial southpaw report I still have to get to, probably because when I did glance at him, there wasn't any notable southpaws on his record. I know Preston Parsons is not, and Basil Hafez is not. I don't believe Valentin Woodburn is either. So there might not be much to take away there, but I will say he does train a lot with Ian Gary's camp, and he was heavily involved in Ian Gary's last camp, which was southpaw predicated, right? It was against Carlos Prates. So I'm sure he absorbed a lot of southpaw looks in that room. But again, whether it's the point in Elliott's career, and even though he looks promising, I still want to see more to justify minus 600. And again, this Korean guy does look talented, but he looks like he could be, kind of a glass cannonish too. Like he's been as impressive as his highlights are, he can be put away and touched in an instant as well. So I'm going to go with Oban Elliott. I don't know by finish or by decision. What are you liking here, Mike?
Yeah, I did some research on this kid, and it all is shiny and great. Like they look at him, like you said, the Korean Mike Tyson. He's got big power, but you guys got to take a look at who he's doing it to. That's the most important thing. Like you can be 15-0 on some regional circuit, and he's knocking dudes down. That's fantastic. Good for him. He's beating who they're putting in front of him. But then all of a sudden they get to a certain level and it's like, all right, well, that shit don't fucking work over here. And I get it. He's got the Sambo background. He's got, gold medalist in Sambo. He's, he's got good striking. He seems to be pretty well-rounded in certain aspects, but at the end of the day, he's fought blankets. He hasn't fought anybody that you could literally sit there and say, well, he's fought him. That was a great fight. He's fighting guys kind of like journeymen. Like that's basically what his record consists of from an MMA perspective. And that's okay. Like I said, that's okay. It's not his fault. He's just beating who they put in front of him. But at the end of the day, I watch Oban Elliott, and I like this kid a lot. I like how well-rounded he is. I like his moxie. I think he's marketable. I think he's got, just enough power. He's got a good, well-rounded game. He's durable. He's got good cardio. Like everything kind of checks out with this kid. I'm not saying he's going to be a Dustin Poirier, he's going to be a champion or anything like that, but he does check out. Like we have no idea if this kid checks out. And I have a feeling that the UFC goes on these tangents where they start falling in love with the Asian market. And, they want to bring as many over as they can to kind of, saturate different markets, because you got to remember at the end of the day, this is a business. The US is great. But they got the US. They got us locked down already. We are locked down. They got the UK locked down already. Like now they're floating over to bigger markets, and they want to pull people from these other markets so they get their eyes on them. Yep. And what better market than the Asian market? It's a huge market. You know what I mean? And even though we have some great fighters that have coming over, bring more. Let's get more. Let's get more. Let's get another prospect. And they're marketing this guy like possibly he could be this new Mike. I look at him no better than I look at a Tyson Nam. I look at him as like a Tyson Nam reborn. He's got that style. He's got good power. He does some nice things, but he's extremely beatable. Like I see holes in his game where I'm like, wow, if he fought XYZ, they would fucking take this guy's head off, and they would have took him down already and subbed him. So I like Oban Elliott. Do I like minus 600? No, because at the end of the day, when you get a guy who has a puncher's chance like this kid, who probably really believes what they're selling him, the Korean Mike Tyson, he really thinks like things can go bad real quick and go sideways. But I like Oban Elliott here. I think Oban Elliott actually finishes him in this spot. I think this guy might start overreaching. He might start utilizing his power a little bit too much, committing too much, because he can't figure Oban Elliott out, or he's not having success doing other things that he wants to do. And he knows his last breath of fresh air is going to be, I need to knock this fucking guy out. And I think that's when mistakes happen. When you start overcommitting, you start just biting down on your mouthpiece and throwing. You get a guy in Oban Elliott who's been in there with good competition. He's going to know how to checkmate you. So I'm going to go Oban Elliott. I'm going to go inside the distance.
Same here. Inside the distance for Oban Elliott, plus 175. Probably not enough to make my round robin, although I think that's a reasonable play. Also, both guys, their losses only come by KO. Half their wins are by decision. So minus 107, close to even money, is a fair price for a fight doesn't go the distance, if you guys like that angle. And if you want to get greedy, which I might for my round robin, Oban Elliott by knockout is plus 310. Again, he's got submissions, but they're rear naked chokes. They're usually stuff that come like after you've hurt the guy. And when I've seen Ko go out, he usually just like goes out, right? And I don't want to make the mistake I did with the controller Connor Matthews, where he didn't go out, but he went fetal. And I'm like, oh, if he goes fetal, there's no chance to submit him. And then I lost a 10-unit swing with that Del Valle. Are you gonna bring that up every show, Dan? I know, but it's to the point where I think that the KO is live for Oban Elliott here. If you want to get greedy, otherwise, if you're just looking for a straight bet, maybe Elliott inside the distance or fight doesn't go. Jonghyun Park minus 195. Ismail Naurdiev plus 165. Totals for this round over 2.5 rounds, minus 155, under 2.5 rounds, plus 125. Now, a little surprising for me. I thought we'd maybe get a little more stacked on the over. This is a fight that feels like it goes to decision for me. But Mike, what does this fight feel like for you?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because Ismail is a guy who literally, like, he's got a lot of talent. Like, the kid is a talented fighter. I mean, he's shown that. in spurts. But that's the problem. You can't show things in spurts. You have to show things consistently. And he just hasn't. Like, he just hasn't showed it. There's some points in time I think you could question, like, does this guy really want to fucking be in here? Or does he want to be fucking picking tomatoes somewhere, you know? So it's like, I it's hard. But when I look at Jung Young Park, I look at somebody who he's coming forward. He is tough. He likes to fight. He likes to get grimy. He'll take the fight anywhere it wants to go. So when I look at that, I look at who has more potential. I think Naurdiev, if he really committed himself, he's the guy with a more potential to be probably a more well-rounded, more athletic, more snappier, more unchained fighter. But he hasn't shown me that. I mean, you go one stint with the UFC, you go another stint with the UFC, you kind of got a rotating door of wins and losses, and it's like, what are we doing here with this guy? Like, what are we really doing here? At least Park, when he goes in there, you're going to get what you get from him. He's going to fight for your money. If he loses, he loses, but it's not going to be without trying. I think Park is just going to overwhelm him. I think it's going to be probably kind of a chippy process in the beginning. These guys are going to be kind of poking, prodding at each other. But I think as time goes on, I think Park is going to start selling out, just smothering them. And I wouldn't doubt if he grounds him and possibly locks up a submission.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Again, Park's not a big middleweight, but again, you look at who Naurdiev has lost to, or even his best wins were against small welterweights slash former lightweights who were old, and Michel Prajeres and CR Bahadrzada literally at the end of their runs. Those are his best wins. And when you look at it, Jung Young Park, he's got good wrestling, and a good jab. And as you know, Mike, that'll get you real far in this sport, especially in a division like middleweight. You can double up a jab and wrestle a bit. Like, yeah, you can win some fights, man. And Jung Young Park has proven that, because he's not the most physically imposing guy. Even though he's more stronger and athletic than he looks, I'm sure, no doubt, he's not exactly a super athlete out there, right? Much less an imposing one. Doesn't have like one shot knockout power, although he can get some accumulation and rock people. He almost got a Hobo Cop out of there, which I know Hobo Cop can be a bit of a glass cannon himself sometimes, as much as I love the guy. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the Iron Turtle here. I won't say too much on it, that other than I got Park and a 2-leg parlay, which a leg I'll give you guys here shortly. Anything else to add to this one, Mike?
No.
All right, well, you thought that one's going to be short, folks. This one's going to be even shorter. We got Daria Zhelezniakova plus 225, Melissa Mullins minus 275. The over 2.5 is minus 105 rounds. The under minus 2.5 2.5 rounds is minus 125. The reason why you are not seeing a juiced over like many women's fights is that Melissa Mullins, even though she is favored to win and roll, she probably will here. We have seen her, speaking of fighters who crumble just off of a touch, right? And again, I'm a big respecter of the liver shot, and that's one that put her down recently. But you look at some of the stuff that, she's reacted to and crumbled to in the past. You're like, oh, I don't know. This is not a defendable favorite, but I will probably end up picking her. Mike, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, well, they actually fought before. This is the second time they're fighting.
Yes. This is another rematch.
And,
yes.
Not regional.
They love their rematches.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me, because when I look at this fight, I'll keep this really short, but
yeah,
you guys got to look at fight or flight mode, right? Like, it's always nice to have a situation to lean back on in panic mode. In boxing, it's a little bit different. In boxing, what happens is if the guy has you in a corner and he's teeing off on you and the ref is getting close, you got no way to kind of get out of there. You can't grab a leg, take him down. You got to fight. You have to fight your way out. If you don't fight your way out and you're not active, they're going to stop the fight. Melissa Mullins is a little different in this spot. She has that in her back pocket. She has the takedown. She has the wrestling where, that's how she kind of wins her fight. She can get into a situation where she's losing it on the feet, and she did it to Daria in the first fight. Then she takes her down. So, that's what I think is going to happen here. I just think that it's going to be a situation where maybe she's losing in the beginning. Maybe the first round she comes out, she gets chewed up a little bit on the feet. Maybe the takedown defense is a little bit better now because they faced each other once before. They kind of grew as fighters now, and they made their reads. But eventually, I just think Melissa gets her to the ground. I think she gets her to the ground. I think she does her work there. I think it's going to be a sloppy fight. I don't think it's a fight you guys should go near. I don't think it's a fight that you guys should tie into parlays. I don't think it's a fight that ultimately you guys should go bananas for in DraftKings either. I think it's a ridiculous fight. I don't even know why they're making it again. But at the end of the day, give me the person who has that wrestling to lean on if shit starts going sideways.
Yeah, I didn't want to harp too much on the rematch angle because I'm just going to go on a rant on how the UFC loves rematches, especially when they're senseless ones. Like they're doing rematches everywhere. It's ridiculous. They've done this before with like Invicta FC fights that didn't happen like too long ago, and then they rematch those. It's the same thing here. But one thing I do say about rematches often is that they seldom play out the same way. So my official pick will be Mullins by decision this time around, and we're going to get you punished with a really bad fight. That's my prediction. Irene Alekseeva minus 275, another similar spread here to another girl who got ground and pounded by a fighter previously mentioned, Claudia Sygula, plus 225, over 2.5 rounds, a little more, I guess, minus 150, under 2.5 rounds, plus 120, which makes sense. I mean, we've seen a lot of these prelim curtain jerking women's fights getting kind of a quiet trend of finishes lately. And again, even if it was a juiced over and it looks like it's going to go over, these aren't proven or dependable fighters, folks. Like they can crumble at the drop of a dime. Like these are not really strong numbers. That being said, I do lean toward Alekseeva. Mike, do you have anything to say on this fight?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'll just say this. I'll say like Sygula is a girl who she could park her shoes under my bed. That's you know what I mean? She could park her shoes under my bed, but outside of that, I just don't think she's a good fighter. Like, I just don't think she's very good. I don't think Alekseeva's very good either, but if you're talking about the last fight and this fight, and you're talking about the odds, which are pretty similar, I think that Alekseeva kind of justifies her price tag a little bit more than Melissa Mullins. Because I don't know where Sygula is actually that good. Like, I've watched film on her, and I'm like, what's so appealing? Why does the UFC, what's so appealing about this girl? Why is she here? Like, why are you inflating the roster that much where you have a girl who might not even be like this in another organization, some top flight person? I just don't see her. I don't see her longing for the UFC. I don't think she's going to be here very long. Maybe Alekseeva won't be here very long either. But I just don't think there's unless Alekseeva comes in and she just doesn't look like herself, or she doesn't want to be there, she makes a drastic mistake, or Sygula shows us things that we've never seen before, I don't see Alekseeva losing this fight.
Yeah, I mean, she got scarf hold arm locked, and she got submitted twice more as an amateur. Sygula did, whereas at least by the way, you say Alekseeva, I want to say Alekseeva. At least she submitted an accomplished judoka and Stephanie Eggers, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, not much else to say on that fight. This fight, though, I did as much tape, maybe close to as much tape as this fight as the main event, but I won't talk about it as much. We got Tajir Ulanbekov, now minus 475. Comeback on Azat Maksum, plus 340. Over 2.5 rounds, set at minus 225. Under 2.5 rounds at plus 185, which means this one probably is going to go over, and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with who is favored. Of course, I hate the line because we are in the age of giant chalk. Between the bookings and the way the markets kind of move, this is kind of like a normality, whether it's justified or not. Before I throw it to you, Mike, I will say Ulanbekov is a guy I have not been a big believer on. He is not a fraud or anything like that by any means. I mean, there are arguments that the guy could be undefeated if that fight gets scored differently against Tim Elliott. You look at the Kazakh fighter who he faced before this one on the regionals, Zhelezniakova, who got jobbed a bunch on decisions in the UFC. However, Zhelezniakova's got some favorable decisions outside of the UFC, including if you actually go back and watch that 5-round war they went through. Like I thought Ulanbekov won that fight, right? So again, for as much as I air quote hate him, I can defend the guy just as well. It's not an unwarranted hate or anything like that. It's just that this guy always gets ridiculously inflated lines, whether they're deserving or not. We can talk about that. And he feels like he's been cruising for a bruising. It was like the shot I took at Motta kind of a deal that I took on Clayton Carpenter, kind of thinking maybe he can get it done in round one. Because I think explosive guys striking, there's going to be holes there. But this one's tough because both these guys, even though I think Azat Maksum is still the better striker than Ulanbekov, especially if he wants to go and switch to his southpaw stance. That being said, Maksum is they share the same weaknesses as far as leg kicks, right? They're both heavy jabbers. They both have really, really decent jabs. Ulanbekov, a really consistent jab, uses to set up his right hand, It's a pretty powerful jab, whereas Maksum, I would say he's more diverse jab, right? Like he has the kind of checking, countering jabs. He's got the prodding ones that are just meant to set up and feint. And then he's got his hard stepping jabs as well, as that Maksum does. I think he's even got like a knockdown off at one time, even though it's mainly his right hand and it's mainly in the first round. However, if he gets out of the first round, he's one of the few flyweights that actually slow down, which is why I've tried to fade Azat Maksum before. Like speaking of Tyson Nam, I took Tyson Nam again. I like Tyson Nam because Tyson Nam, unlike the guy you compared him with, I will say Tyson Nam at least had a chin. And he did make a decent account of himself in that fight, albeit he lost via split decision because, of course, he was the body and leg worker. We know that doesn't usually rub well with the judges. And you won't have to worry about that with Ulanbekov. However, I do think Ulanbekov is the better wrestler, and Ulanbekov, unlike Maksum, gets better as the fight goes on. So I think that if he gets out of the first round, he can roll. I do think that a guillotine is also live for Ulanbekov because he's got a wicked guillotine, and Maksum, he's been stuck in some guillotines, and he'll wrestle, but he will really go head first. So I got Ulanbekov parlay with Park for minus 106, 1.6 units. I do think Maksum could be live, like for a split decision, or around one. There's high numbers on that if you want to sprinkle as a hedge, folks. I might be putting fight ends in split decision in my round robin for a hedge, and maybe putting Ulanbekov by submission in the round robin for the houses that don't allow the ends by split prop. Sorry, I threw a lot out there, but that's what I got for this one, Mike. Mike, what do you got for this one, buddy?
Yeah, I just I listen, man. I'm a Ulanbekov guy. You know, I like his style. I like his. You know, I'm a big guy on somatotypes. Like I look at a person's somatotype, and there's guys that have fighters' bodies, and there's guys that don't have fighters' bodies.
Yeah,
you guys like Zabit. He had that like real lanky fighter's body. He was rangy. He was like an octopus. Same thing with Ulanbekov, man. He's got that like just that long frame, that wiry frame. And listen, man, like I get it. I get what you're saying. Like there's something about him that why is he always like favored like this? Why, you know, or is he putting these spots minus 400, minus 500 against? But look at the guys that he is beating and the way like one gut fighter, like even Nate Maness. Like Nate Maness, people don't think Nate Maness.
Yes.
Nate Maness is tough, bro.
Yeah.
Like Maness is a very, very tough fighter. If you look at his resume, Durden, like he's beat some really good guys. Like he's beat some really, really good guys. Some of them convincingly, some of them not so convincingly. But he's another situation where you don't know where he is. Like it seems like everybody he goes in there with, he gets it done somehow. And it doesn't mean he's running through people consistently, like first round. He kind of systematically dismantles you until he's ready to step on your throat. And I just think the biggest hole, I think what's going to happen is the takedown defense. I think it's going to be there for him. I think he's going to be able to ground this fight. I think he's going to be able to get some control time. And I think eventually he's going to lock something up, whether it's a ninja choke or something. I just think that you're looking at like a second or third round submission.
Yeah, that's what I'm between. It's like part of me really wants the submission and get greedy. Like that's what I want to throw in the round robin or at least have action on. Like I'll probably still throw some action on the submission just because it's the read. If we're not doing it, what the hell else are we doing, right? But yeah, I got Tajir with Park in that big parlay. You know, not too big. It only pays off like 1.5 units, but maybe more if I plot my chips right as far as the decision props or submission props go. All right, moving on to the lastly but not leastly, the heavyweights. Of course, we've got the ham man, Hamdi Abdelwahab, the sweaty meat master. I don't know that that's his name, but it is now. Minus 170 for Hamdi. Muhammad Usman, the waddling giant muscle baby, as the heavy hands guys call him, which is just a beautiful name. For Mo Usman, plus 140 to come back on him. Over 2.5 rounds, set at minus 240. They know we're getting slop fest, baby. Under 2.5 rounds, plus 190. Again, this is where the low level heavyweight should be. Remember they were making like this kind of heavyweight fight a co-main event for every other Apex card, Mike? It's like, no, do what Joe Silva did. This is the dark match. You curtain jerk with these fights. Perfect placement for this fight. What do you got, Mike?
Yeah, I this is how bad the heavyweight division is, guys. Like, really think about when you're talking about heavyweights, you're talking about like, listen, I'm 265. If you put me in there with another 265-pound guy, chances are in 15 minutes somebody's getting put to sleep, whether it's me or him. We're at a situation in the fucking heavyweight division now where we're getting you're laying 3-1 odds
Yes.
It's insane to me. I mean, it's really, really crazy to me. But I gotta kind of agree with the over. I'm like, you know what? You get two guys. You get one guy who's supposed to be, when he first came in, remember how credentialed of a wrestler he was supposed to be?
Yeah.
This big credentialed wrestler. And then you got a guy in Muhammad Usman who I seen him. I was at the Apex Center, live front and center, watching him fight Mick Parkin. And I got to be honest with you, like I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, really, like it looked ridiculous. Like I was literally, I don't know. Have you ever been to the Apex Center?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you know how like in close and personal it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's almost like you're at a gym sitting outside the fucking cage watching. Yes. And I'm watching this fight, and I'm going, "Are you fucking?" Like I almost felt like I wanted to rip off my shirt and go in there. I was like, I could fucking fight him like this. Yes. It was just slow. It was plotting. It was very telegraphed. There was no, I don't know. There's something about him. I don't know what it is, but the crazy thing is sometimes he finds ways to win. I don't get it. I don't get it. But when I look at this fight and I look at the way Hamdi fights and the way he could fight and he should fight, I think if he does actually utilize his wrestling, and he does, even if he's not successful, even if he can't get a takedown, he just pushes his body weight against him. He makes him, wear him a little bit on the cage. I think eventually Usman is going to get tired. He's going to start slowing down. He's going to get tired, and eventually the takedown can come a little bit easier. And if you're the half of the wrestler that people are touting you to be, you should have no problem with controlling Muhammad Usman on the ground. So I think that should be the game plan for him. I think he's got to come into this fight, hell or high water. I'm not going to struggle. I'm just going to push you up against the cage. I'm going to make you wear my weight. I'm going to get that lactic acid building up in those shoulders and them arms. And then by the middle of the second round, I'm going to ground you, and I'm just going to lay on top of you, and I'm going to fucking let you taste my hummus sweat, whatever.
Yep.
Oh, no. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I think this fight's going to go. I really do. I think it's just going to be like he's going to be laying on top of Usman, and you're going to hear the announcers going, Usman's looking at us. He doesn't really know how to get out of this. He's not shrimping away, or he's just gassed. He's just really gassed. And it's going to be like that fight where, like, are we set for a fucking shit night like this or what? So I'm going Hamdi by decision. I think he's going to just get the minutes and hummus sweat.
Yeah, man. You know what? I'm gonna defend you for a second because you mentioned Mick Parkin. And
Hamdi by decision.
That immediately makes me want to go into my Mick Parkin impression. Listen, folks, if I can, make racist impressions of Mick Parkin, be like, oh yeah, I'm Mick Parkin, yeah, I want to fight for some bread pie, yeah. If I can, which I would do on my old podcast, by the way.
He looks like somebody that would fight in bare knuckle years ago.
He looks like he talks like that, though, does he not? Like
oh yeah, of course.
Like, like, oh yeah, you all punching you,
like Jerry Cooney.
He's probably I met Jerry Cooney, but Mick Parker's probably like the nicest guy in the world, and I make him sound like the most stupidest Englishman. So apologies to my brothers across the pond.
Like Mick Parker, dude.
I know you guys all don't sound like that, but that's just that's just how we let him fly out here. And I'll probably let another impression fly when we talk about our dog or pass parlay. That's right, it's that time of the show, folks. We're gonna, before we recap what we have our consensus on, we're gonna put together a play. Me and Mike are both gonna pick a favorite line and a dog line. Doesn't mean we're picking a dog money line, especially on a card like this where we both, I think, barely picked any dogs, and I don't think any of them were consensus. That doesn't mean we can't find a plus number with a prop somewhere. So one minus number, one plus number. What do you got for this card, Mike? We'll put it together at the end.
So for my favorite right now, I am going to go Orolbai.
All right, let's do it.
And what about you?
For my favorite, I'll go Park.
You're gonna go Park.
I think those are some solid money lines. They're fighters that we can depend on fighting for our money regardless. Okay. I think those are and those are reasonable money lines for the card.
Do you have your dog yet?
Yeah, I do.
Talk to me.
You want? Okay, let me go first. Well, I'm going to go for fucking Oban Elliott there, and his stick toys there to get to hold it and knockout. No, for the inside the distance line, just to be safe. I'm not going to get greedy with it. We'll go inside the distance, Mike.
Oban Elliott inside the distance.
Plus 175.
Plus 175. Where the hell is that fight? I'm looking for it here. Do you have it up on your screen?
I got it.
Can you put it together? Because all the
lines I can.
Okay, so far you got Orolbai, you have Park, and you have Elliott inside the distance. I don't have a Ulanbekov by submission line over here yet. Do you?
Yeah, it was plus 310 or something along those lines.
What is Ulanbekov inside the distance?
Ulanbekov inside the distance is going to be plus 240, actually. That's not bad. That's not too far down.
It's not too far down. Do that. I'm going to take him inside the distance. I'll play it safe. I'll play all angles.
And then what's the lines for Park? We got minus 190, and for Orolbai, we've got minus 175 is the most available lines for those. So I'll put those in minus 190, minus 175, and we'll add in that plus 240 for the Tajir inside the distance. I like those odds. I think we try to shoot over 10-1 odds. This is plus 2143. So
you want to throw a fifth wheel in there that we both agree upon?
Oh, I think we're getting too dangerous now. But what would you throw in if we did throw in? Just curious.
If we threw a fifth wheel in, I would say let's do. I mean, you want to be a degenerate and just pick Hamdi? No. No. All right, we'll see. 20. That's a great line. We'll keep that.
It's a great line, honestly. Yeah. And even though Tajir is one of the safer favorites, in a way, it could be one of the riskier lines just because we're getting cute, right? So there is some risk there, but that's a good payout, man. I really like it. I think we got two solid favorites, and then we just need Tajir and Oban Elliott.
Well, you know what? Wait a minute.
Two guys set up.
What's Naimov inside the distance?
Naimov inside the distance. He is an opportunistic MF or any. Naimov inside the distance is plus 163. Not as good.
All right, I'm going to go with my
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, I mean, Naimov's going to make us sweat whether it comes or not. Yeah. I don't know if that's worth it. Whereas whether it comes or not, Ulanbekov, he's going to be trying to process of him or taking the opportunistic guillotines when he.
All right, I'll stick with that. All right, we got a good one. We got a good one this week. All right,
I'm going to put $20 on everyone want to see again, and we're just going to recap the card quickly from top to bottom. We are both taking Khalil Rountree over Jamahal Hill, correct, Mike?
Yep.
I didn't lock in. I'm not as firm on this one as you, but I believe you're picking Bahamondes officially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not fucking sitting here putting my dick on the line saying chop it off if he loses, but yeah. I like Bahamondes here.
That's a hell of a bet. There's a bet idea for later, folks. There's a bet idea for later. No, Jesus Christ. I'm leaning toward Fiziev, but again, even if I end up picking him, and even if I end up playing him, it'd be like, I wouldn't follow me off that cliff. It feels like a really trappy fight. We are both picking Blaydes, but we both acknowledge the trappiness of the fight and heavyweight itself. We are both picking Orolbai, and even though I didn't want to bet the fight, this will be the one bet I have on it because I do feel good about him. He is a dog. He is a fighter that's going to fight for your money regardless of his number. We are both on him. Mike is sensibly on Nazim Sadykhov, as I should be, but I'm taking the dog shot here like a maniac with some bias baked in, admittedly. So there's some dissension on that one. We both like Naimov there. We just, we wish it was more clear than what it maybe should be. We both like Oban Elliott, obviously. We're taking him inside the distance, not just as a consensus pick. We both like Park. I really like Park. I threw him in a parlay. We both like Mullins, but we are not confident on these women's fights, just like we both took the favorite in Alekseeva. But, from the totals to the numbers themselves, you're not even getting the most giant of dog numbers where you really want to go CF dot model. You can. I don't even think I'll be picking the dogs in Toutmaster. We both agree on Ulanbekov here. I've got him in a parlay, and he is in our Dogger Pass parlay. And we both agree on the Ham Man, the Sweaty Meat Master.
Please, I'm telling you, we should fucking cap it off with fucking Hamdi Ham.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a PRP layer where we just add Hamdi as a sole PRP second line layer.
Ham.
Just shout. The man Cody Safdie there, but but yeah,
come in with that fucking roasted pepper fucking Sabra hummus, just rubbing it all over him on the grass.
The detail, it's burning my eyes, Mike. It's burning.
Listen, guys, I know this week I didn't pick any dogs, dude. This sometimes this is the way it goes. So don't come in the comments and say fucking guy comes out, he doesn't pick all winners, he doesn't pick all dogs. Like I'm sorry, there's no dogs on this card that I like this week.
There's been plenty of favorite trends, so that's kind of the reason why. And again, like I talked about, with the way the UFC is matchmaking, whether it's the last minute matchups or these kind of slates of cards, they're stacking heavy favorites, and the market is following suit, and they're only inflating it. Half of it you can blame on the bookmakers, the other half you got to blame on the market, folks, right? And before I go the round robin, Dan, what are you targeting? Of course, I'll lock it in. Mike's been great about the YouTube comments. Thank you guys for all the positive comments and just feedback in general. But of course, you're going to see Mike post the Dogger Pass parlay there down in the comments. Hit the like button there. And I will post the round robin when I got it locked in. But I can tell you right now, I'm looking at Khalil Rountree by knockout, Tajir Ulanbekov either by submission, probably by submission or something kind of inside the distance. I'm also looking at Oban Elliott by knockout. I know we got the ITD, so I'll get greedy in the round robin. I'll probably put him by knockout in there. I'm already on Nicholas Motta, so it'd be pretty stupid, but that plus 700 by knockout, because that is his win condition. Maybe something on Blaydes. It depends on what kind of numbers they post. But yeah, that's kind of roughly what I'm targeting for my round robin. Mike, anything to shout out before we go?
Yeah, no, man. It's just same usual thing. You guys want to follow me on Twitter? I'm usually doing the rounds, commenting on how they're going, scoring, stuff like that. It's pretty good time over there. If you guys want to join the site, the madlabmma.com, we do everything. I mean, the content that we give, whether you agree with my picks or not, you're not going to get more detailed content. I mean, we got the Fight Brain technology. We got all my audios up. We have a live stream before the fight. You got wagering blueprints, everything, 20 pages a week on DraftKings angles and ceilings and floors. We pretty much, and we cover boxing. We cover a litany of boxing every week if it's worth covering. And we got a great community. So like I said, we have weekly tiers, monthly tiers, yearly tiers. You can come in and just try for the week. Come in. We got a great community, and I hope I see you soon.
Mike knows his shit. I will say that. You can find me at Dan Tom MMA on all social platforms. I'm mainly active on the artist formerly known as Twitter, where I share my weekly picks analysis. I do my in-depths, of course, and the main card picks over at MMA Junkie. No Southpaw reports or interviews at Home of Fight this week, but I do contribute over there. You can find me on Substack. Subscribe for free, where I lock in my picks and plays. If you don't want to wait for my picks and plays thread that I do with the movie gift themes, I don't know what I'll use for Azerbaijan this week, Mike. I'll think of something. But yeah, you can find me there at Dan Tom MMA. Thank you guys. Thank you guys in back, Dayton and Jared, double team, double timing. Especially for, we tried to get it under an hour and a half. We're an hour and 45. So I really appreciate you guys holding it down in the back of the house. As for you folks out there, good luck on your picks and plays, and always protect your neck.
Oh, oh, oh. Oh.